It's Kirby, it's Bloggy, it's just a little foggy, and on this Kirbloggy, I'm invading your YT. If you can't tell what today's subject is, this is a question that was submitted from Anani on Tumblr. Possible Kirblog topic. It is possible no more. It is possible. What were your fondest memories, favorite characters, and episodes of Tiny Toon Adventures and the movie How I Spent My Summer Vacation? It'll be celebrating the 25th anniversary this coming week, and I would love to hear about how it impacted you both as a fan of Looney Tunes, as an animator / artist in general. This is a cool one, and actually it lines up pretty well. I didn't even realize about the TTA 25th anniversary, not to be confused with the TTA that I made, which was a coincidence, but kind of a funny one, because Tiny Toon Adventures was another series that it's one of those that, again, that I don't really often think about, but it really did leave a huge impact on me. I've been talking about a lot of shows like that in some of the recent Kirbloggs that have been put out for the last few months, but the very early days are a little difficult for me to remember exactly, but I know that I definitely saw Looney Tunes in syndication, which I talked about on the Looney Tunes specific Kirblog a while back. I know that I saw those ahead of time because it was familiar enough with the Looney Tunes characters, like all the major ones, that by the time I saw the episodes, because they started airing in 1990, so I would have only been like an infant by that point, but I'd seen them enough to know who all the characters were, and to be able to tell even at that young of an age that, like, for instance, Buster and Babs were like the younger equivalents of Bugs and, Plucky to Daffy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was able to tell that for virtually all the characters by the time that I saw the show. I know that it was airing in syndication for a while. I'm pretty sure I'd seen it somewhere else before that, and then eventually it was being put on Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was not the first place I saw it, because I remember seeing a commercial on Nickelodeon that was saying, hey, we're putting Tiny Toons on here now. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, because I've already seen this, so now I'm excited to watch it on this channel that I'm constantly watching because my sister's on the show and blah, 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 etc. But yeah, so I've been following for a while. Funnily enough, my fondest actual memories of stuff relating to Tiny Toons, and I'll probably be talking more about this in particular when I hopefully eventually do a Kirblog with my dad if I get to go home and visit and see him for the holidays. But it was actually playing a lot of the video games. My dad and I played the absolute shit out of Buster's Hidden Treasure for the Sega Genesis, which we'll talk probably ad nauseum about when we do that Kirblog together. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I think that I'd spent so much time with that game, and I was just kind of only ever seeing random episodes when they were on. I think there really were a whole bunch that I don't think I saw until maybe in the last couple of years when I went back and I just re-marathoned everything. And interestingly enough too, I remember that there was a distinct thing about, because the game we just played it for so long, and I knew it front and back by that point. But with the music, there was a music track in particular. If any of you guys remember this, there was a track, and I think it was actually in a few of the different Tiny Toons games before us. But it's do 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 bum bum ba bum ba do 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 bum 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 da 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 do 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 ba da da do do da ram bum 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 do 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 do. It was like a boss theme in one of them, and then it was just a level theme in the Genesis game that I was talking about. But I remember when I would later see episodes of the show that had that music, I was just immediately freaking out. Oh my god, it's from that, etc. Oh my god. We'll talk more about that when I eventually have my dad on. But otherwise, yeah. So I was big into that series, and I will say, I guess just to answer first and foremost, I think actually Buster and Babs and probably Go Go Dodo were my favorite characters of the main cast. I mean, all of them were funny in their own ways, and I know a lot of people kind of give more credit to Animaniacs, and I know that probably objectively Animaniacs is a better show than Tiny Toons, but I think that Tiny Toons still holds up perfectly well on its own, and I still look back on it with fond memories. There's a lot of really solid episodes. My favorite actual thing from it is not an episode. It is definitely the How I Spent My Summer Vacation special, which I think was also divided up into episodes at some point, but they treated it like it was a home video release, which is how I would usually see it. Yeah, I mean, Tiny Toons, one of the biggest things, I keep saying that and going all over the place, one of the biggest things about that show is the quotes in how they've permanently affected how I say certain things. And sometimes they're very obscure ones too. Like I always feel bad when people don't always necessarily recognize them because they're just looking at me like I got two heads or something. But once in a while, it's like there's a scene where I think it's Fifi LaFume and some other characters are like infiltrating this one part of this building where there's like a bunch of talk show hosts doing some show, and one of them is like, "Oh my, we're having some fun now," and then he punches the screen or something. I say that just once in a while, like if we're ever in like a weird or awkward situation or just something, there's a moment of silence, I'll just pipe in with that. And just recently, I was torturing Steve Yurko on the way back we were getting dinner somewhere, and I was reminded, because we were talking about, oh, we should go to Disneyland at some point, and I just started singing, Happy World Land, where the fun never stops and only $50 a pop when you're in Happy World Land. And he's like, what is that? I know that. And I'm just like, no, you figured it out. Welcome to a world where the fun never stops. We have 2 rides and 100 gift shops. That special is a goddamn masterpiece. And that's not to say that the show itself is not amazing in its own right. The quotes though, the quotes are really what made me remember the most. Like, oh, this was my favorite episode. I was just pulling up like the list of all the different ones and remembering as many as I could delve into my mind from. The only specific one that I can't remember that I wasn't able to jot down was there was some episode where Babs is teaching. She's teaching Dizzy Devil how to like speak properly. So she shoves a bunch of like walnuts into his mouth, and she keeps making him say this phrase over and over again. And then this is another one that's like sometimes I'll bring it up, and occasionally when people will recognize it, I get really happy. But it's like, the walls and the balls are like totally, totally tall, for sure. And then I'll be like, for sure, like he's got it. Other ones, Who Bopped Bugs Bunny is a classic. Jonathan Winters was really great as that slap happy sappy or whatever, that one like character who is clearly ripping on that elephant character or whatever. There's a whole like kind of joke with these warring animation studios and like him attacking Bugs Bunny was kind of the whole like reference to that. But anyway, the Return of Bat Duck. As someone who's not even that big of a Tim Burton fan, just all the shit going on with that and all the references to those movies, like there are definitely episodes when I went back and I watched them recently. There were a lot of really funny things that I get now. As with many good cartoons, like, oh, I'm an adult, and now I get all these jokes that I didn't get as a kid, etc. Journey to the Center of Acme Acres was a fun one because I love the little devil guys that are in the center of the world. And another good quote from that one. Maximilian, I need to tell you, we are looking for a really, really big gold nugget. This is funny too because I'm reminded when I first met Diskin, he was telling me like how excited he was when he started working on Kids Next Door. He was still a teenager, and he grew up with Tiny Toons just like I did, and he got to work with Cree Summer, and he was like, oh my god, she was Elmira. Anything with Elmira was pretty gold. I am in agreement. Didn't love Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain, but I mean in general she was pretty goddamn hilarious, and Cree's like improv and ad-libbing and ridiculousness on her was amazing. A lot of ones that I also strangely had some distinct memories of were the ones that were kind of like parodies of these different like other channels. Like there was the Acme TV, which was just like a mad parody, and they had the whole like Super Pluckio Brothers thing that when I'm like 7 and I'm obsessed with Nintendo games, of course I'm going to remember that. Toon TV with all the music, a lot of the music videos were fantastic. It's in His Kiss is one of my favorites with Babs and all that. And Do You Love Me? Do You Love Me? Which that song I feel is so like dead to the world by now, but whenever I think of it, I immediately think of the music video with Buster and Babs. Also, one of my okay, this is where some things are going to tie into my later parts of my life, but a babysitter, Kimberly, a friend of my sister's, who was looking after me one summer, the one whose house I was at when I created the Kerber for 12 screen name. I've probably told that story in the very first Kirblog, but she and I used to always quote this one really quick, like, I don't even know what the joke was supposed to be. I'm sure if I should have looked it up, but it's Shirley the Loon in the Toon TV episode singing this song about how, like, nothing comes close, like, nothing comes close to you. I don't know if maybe like she got the reference and I didn't, and just we enjoyed it together for different reasons. But I just found it really amusing, and I would quote that one all the time. And like I think like late elementary school age for me. Video game blues as well from the Toon TV episode. Another fantastic one with Rob Paulsen singing. I guess he was singing as Foulmouth, which also P.S. Foulmouth, anything with him, goddamn gold. I feel like Foulmouth is like the character that made them want to work with Rob on like a bigger level than just that, because they because they had they had gotten to know him so well from just like doing that character that like, I mean, I don't know that for sure, but it seems like because Foulmouth was such a lot of the stuff that Rob did in the show was so stand out that like by the time that Animaniacs happened, they were like, oh, we're making you a main character. I've been in situations like that where like, you know, from project to project, I find the people who are really good that I want to kind of carry over to the next thing, which I think I've probably talked about in other Kirblogs before. But anyway, video game blues. Also, I guess on the note of plucky and music videos, the They Might Be Giants music videos on what I believe was the MTV parody episode. Istanbul and it's not Constantinople, by the way. Long time gone, Constantinople. Why didn't Constantinople get the works? That's nobody's business but the Turks. Istanbul. Sorry, that was too much. The End Particle Man, of course, and then finding out, it's funny. I was just talking about Homestar Runner, the experimental film. They might be giants. They might love animation. I guess I'm sure. Yeah. So my last favorite of the like actual series that I really remember was, and I feel like it probably wasn't even like one of the best episodes they ever did. Like I feel like for some reason it might be like one of the black sheep ones of the show, but It's a Wonderful Tiny Toons Christmas special. Maybe I just think that because it was one of the things that by that point Buster's voice had changed. It was John Kassir was doing it after Charlie Adler, which I didn't mind. I thought he was perfectly fine on that part, even though Charlie was the one I grew up with and everything. But that special, I remember it was a little cheesy, it was a little ridiculous, but like it had a lot of like fun, kind of cool, and like almost dramatic moments at times. It was just like a different kind of episode. The other funny thing is, this isn't one of my favorites, but I remember the haunted house episode with the beast guy that Dr. Gene Splicer, excuse me, who I was introduced to from the video games first, and then I saw him in the show. But he had the beast character that he was hypnotizing with his little helmet or whatever. I remember seeing that. It wasn't one of my favorites. And then I found out, I think this has been like talked about more in depth later, but John Kay and Bob Camp, who worked with John Kay on Ren and Stimpy for a long time, and even after he was kicked off the show, Bob Camp came to my school and did a lecture at SVA, and he talked about how they wrote an episode about Plucky and Hampton and Buster and Babs, I think, going to to a haunted mansion and getting just fucked with by these weird ghosts or whatever. I believe after Steven Spielberg had suggested an episode that was basically just an obvious Casper ripoff, so John Kay and Bob Camp got really drunk and they storyboarded out this episode that was totally disgusting, and they were so offended. And then they eventually turned that into a Ren and Stimpy episode where they go to a haunted mansion and they're meeting the ghosts and all that, which was kind of funny. But so those were all the actual episodes I liked. So one that I remember as a kid was not one of my favorites, but definitely one when I look back on it, not only became one of my favorites when I watched the whole show again, but I think actually might have been a really major unconscious thing. And forgive me, I can't remember if I've already told this story in, again, one of the very first Kirblogs that I ever did. It might have been the first, about how I got into animation. But an episode that was called Animaniacs. So just more fair warning, if you've already listened to that and I've already told this story, I apologize for repeating myself. But there was an episode of Tiny Toons called Animaniacs, and it was about the characters having to work together and make animated films. And they go through the entire process of how a cartoon is made. I'm sure as a 5-year-old or whatever, I had zero comprehension of how that shit actually worked. But I think that seeing that just like unconsciously enough like affected me in terms of how I wanted to do my stories and how I wanted to like create stuff in general, that it might have been a major factor in that. And the funniest thing to me now is that when I watched it again years later, when they had the film festival, by that point I had already graduated college, so this would have been like only a couple years ago I had seen this again.
But yeah, seeing the like the original Looney Tune characters having to be the judges for the film festival, and then them just being absolutely miserable with it, and having to sit through all these like shoddy, ridiculous, like douchey kind of films. And that's not to take the piss out of like my colleagues, but I've been to at least 3 or 4 of the Dusty screenings, which are it's the film festival that the college I went to, SVA, would hold at the end of each year, and all of the film students and animation students would show their films at. And there were some great ones, some amazing ones, and also there were some not very good ones, to be totally, frankly honest. And I will not name any names at all, but more or less I understood what that felt like. So both perspectives, and just that entire episode, I was like, oh my god, this was my life. I completely have a newfound understanding for this thing that, as far as I know, might have been a partial reason as to why I was doing all this shit in the first place. So that's kind of incredible, and I don't really know. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I like to think that it was something that kind of planted a seed for, like, okay, if you want to tell stories, you want to make up characters, you want to do this stuff, well, this is how it's done. And then, to be fair, there was also an episode of, like, Kirby Right Back at Ya that I think did something about that, and how that, cartoons were made in that sort of way. So maybe that was a continuing part of it, but I mean, probably not even. I think Newgrounds ended up being more of a later influence on that. But either way, yeah, so those are a bunch of things about Tiny Toon Adventures. I think I covered all of the actual ground of that question. So hope you're welcome, Anonymous, and thank you for reminding me about the 25th anniversary. So I guess with that said, in the comments below, please tell me of your recollections of the Tiny Toon Adventure series. Did you grow up with it? And if so, give me your favorite characters and episodes and why. I expect it on my desk in the morning. Also, did you play any of the video games like I did, and do you have any fond memories of those? I promise I'll talk more about that if I get to do this Kirblog eventually down the line, maybe over the holiday. But anywho, this might actually be my last regular... No, that's not true. I might be able to have a couple more regular Kirblogs for a while. I've got some big stuff planned for October. I'll be talking more about that very soon. But yeah, in the meantime, if you have the usual suggestions for Kirblog topics, leave a comment about that, or hit me up on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, whatever you feel like. Thanks for listening. Thanks for enjoying. And boo, 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 boo. I didn't make up any words this time.